What's up everybody, I'm Jesse, and you didn't read wrong. I have information from interviews with Aonuma, Miyamoto, Nintendo, Grezzo, Tantalus, Capcom, and others that I will source during this video to show you the future of the Zelda series for 2018, 2019, 2020, and possibly even beyond. Now, let me explain. If you read the title and clicked this video, then you're excited or at least interested in the idea of 3 separate Zelda games being in development at the same time. As you should be, because we're going to be diving into information on the next big Zelda game, the next handheld Zelda game, and what may be a surprising 3rd or 4th mystery Zelda game. Are they remakes? Are they original titles? Are they a mix of both, like A Link Between Worlds being a reimagined A Link to the Past? I'm not sure, but maybe you can help me out by putting together all of the information and commenting below what your thoughts are. But first, this channel is all about Zelda and Nintendo news, rumors, theories, and discussions. So click subscribe if you want more videos like this. To start off, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the recent news of Nintendo working on the Breath of the Wild follow-up. If you haven't heard, Aonuma made the announcement that they have begun work on the next Zelda game. All of the Nintendo-focused news sites and YouTube channels are talking about it. All of the hardcore Zelda fans are getting excited, and they should be. A new Zelda game is exciting. Now, I actually didn't bother making a news video on this, because when I first read the news articles, I assumed it was common sense. Nintendo has publicly stated many times in past interviews that development of the next Zelda game begins around the end of the previous, sometimes even before the game releases. A few short examples: Miyamoto has mentioned that before Zelda 2 ever finished, he already had the concept for Zelda 3 completed in his head. We actually have a full video that covers interviews where Miyamoto goes into details about his Zelda 3 ideas. Fun fact, it was originally a 3-party system like traditional RPGs, but was changed to the A Link to the Past that we're all familiar with now. Next, work on the Wind Waker first began before Majora's Mask was even finished, as the original concept was first shown off as a more modernized version of Ocarina of Time's graphics, with adult Link fighting Ganondorf. As we all know, it was later changed to the cartoon style, and adult Link wasn't even part of the game. Moving on, Twilight Princess actually began as Wind Waker 2, and was in production long before Wind Waker was even close to being finished. However, due to negative feedback from the cartoon art style of the original, Nintendo had to turn all of the assets they had worked on for the sequel into a realistic art style, and evolved it into the more mature Twilight Princess. Now with Majora's Mask, it technically began pre-production before Ocarina of Time was finished. When Ocarina of Time was nearing completion after the cancellation of the Ura expansion, Miyamoto wanted to move the next Zelda game to the more powerful GameCube. Aonuma, still excited about the Nintendo 64, asked Miyamoto if he could still work on a Nintendo 64 release. Miyamoto agreed, but only if Aonuma could finish production within a single year, as Aonuma already had a lot of unused assets from the cancelled expansion. They molded everything they already had to fit with their new ideas and concepts for Majora's Mask. The point is, as this pattern continues, and taking in interviews from Aonuma, Miyamoto, and Fujibayashi, the new director for Breath of the Wild, Nintendo would have begun work on the follow-up to Breath of the Wild before the game ever released. Yes, they have been working on DLC, but most studios usually dedicate a small team to finishing DLC, while the main team works on future projects. Some studios even hire a brand new team to work on DLC. Sometimes this works out great, and other times it gives lackluster DLC. The only official information that we actually have about the follow-up to Breath of the Wild is that Aonuma wants to use the Breath of the Wild engine to create a multiplayer game with the experience that he has learned from Triforce Heroes. Before some of you get mad saying that you don't want a multiplayer Zelda game, remember, Breath of the Wild, or as it was first announced Zelda Wii U, was first announced as a multiplayer game as well. During the Nintendo Direct, when Wind Waker HD was first announced, Aonuma gave us our first information about Zelda Wii U. 1. He said he didn't want you to think of it as a single player experience. And 2, he said he wanted to break the conventions of the Zelda franchise. Since his concept of Zelda Wii U or Breath of the Wild first began as a non-single player experience, perhaps this is him finally creating that HD multiplayer game that he wanted to with the beginning of Breath of the Wild. Now that we have one Zelda game out of the way, what about the other two in production? Well, Nintendo at all times has had at least 2 or 3 teams working on Zelda games at the exact same time. At one point, they had at least 5 teams working on at least 6 different Zelda games. We had Grezzo working on Majora's Mask 3D, Tantalus was working on Twilight Princess HD, Nintendo's primary home console team was working on Wind Waker HD alongside Breath of the Wild. Nintendo's handheld team was working on Triforce Heroes with Grezzo helping, and Team Ninja was working on Hyrule Warriors Legends. Zelda games typically take 3 to 5 years to release, which means at one point, all of these games were in development alongside each other, give or take one of them. So if we take a look at Nintendo's dedicated handheld Zelda team, this is the team that worked on Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, A Link Between Worlds, and Triforce Heroes. Aonuma has actually already mentioned this new handheld game. In an interview during the release of Breath of the Wild, he was asked about the next 2D Zelda game. His simple answer, he said he wants to evolve what we think of a traditional 2D Zelda game. However, if you ask me, he already did this. Since Phantom Hourglass, handheld Zelda games have always had fully 3D models with full 3D worlds. They are no longer 2D, like A Link to the Past, Minish Cap, or the original Zelda games. However, the camera does remain in a top-down position to simulate a 2D game. This is known as 2.5D, so technically, this has evolved what a 2D game is. On top of this, A Link Between Worlds had a new gameplay mechanic that literally made you a 2D image on the wall in a 3D world. When this happened, the 2D-ish top-down camera would lower to the floor and show off the full 3D models. Let's not forget, this game can also be played in 3D. All of this added together certainly evolves what a 2D Zelda game is. But for Aonuma to take this even further has me beyond interested, since the 3DS already has more Zelda games than any other console. And this may not be in order, but we have Ocarina of Time 3D, A Link Between Worlds, Majora's Mask 3D, Triforce Heroes, Hyrule Warriors Legends, and almost every other main series Zelda game to have ever existed prior to the 3DS playable on the system, aside from the Wii and GameCube games. Nintendo probably think that's enough, especially considering even the next traditional Pokémon game, which has never been on a home console, is making the jump from the 3DS to the Switch. Plus, the 3DS compared to the Nintendo Switch is very limiting. We can see this with games like Xenoblade Chronicles not even being able to play on the regular 3DS. We have the newest Pokémon games having trouble with frame rates, and that's without 3D effect. If Nintendo is struggling to get these games running at a smooth frame rate, the Switch, being several times more powerful, opens up a world of possibilities. The only other hint Aonuma has given about this handheld game is when he was asked if we could see a Paper Zelda game, similar to the Paper Mario games. He jokingly said yes.
Paper Zelda?
ペーパーゼルダ。今日はない。
That's it right there.
今日はペーパーゼルダない。
So you're saying there's a chance?
もうやってるよ。
A Paper Zelda game would evolve what we do think of a 2D Zelda game. Now, my question is this a joke answer from Aonuma? And if I had my pick, I would actually be happy with a Paper Zelda or a Yarn Zelda, similar to the Yarn Yoshi and Kirby games. How would that play out? I have no idea, but it would be awesome. It should also be known that he has mentioned if fans want it bad enough, he would consider remaking Zelda 2. This brings us to our last Zelda game. But first, a few possibilities. Nintendo has stated they were impressed with the work done on Twilight Princess HD by Tantalus. So it is very likely they return to Tantalus to work on another remake, possibly Skyward Sword HD, as it's the only 3D Zelda game to have not seen a remake. Skyward Sword, being the newest of all of those, remains the only one without an HD remake. But they could be working on something like a port of the Wii U Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD as a collection for the Switch. but that's just getting my hopes up. Remember, this is just a guess, as we have no mention of what Tantalus or any of these other companies that I'll be mentioning is actually doing. Moving to Capcom, they've recently shown interest in working with Nintendo again. I'm sure a lot of you know this, but there are a few that are new to the series that don't. Capcom has worked on several Zelda games. Aside from ports of A Link to the Past and other games for the Game Boy Advance, they worked on Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons for the Game Boy, Four Swords Adventures, and Four Swords for the GameCube and Game Boy Advance, and of course, the Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance, which was the only Zelda game that was made from the ground up for the Game Boy Advance. Nintendo didn't even release their own new Zelda game for that console. With Nintendo being more lenient with their properties and going after third-party relationships, it would make perfect sense for them to once again partner with Capcom. Moving on, since Hyrule Warriors came to both the Wii U and 3DS with the DLC, and the recent success of Fire Emblem Warriors, it is entirely possible that we see a Switch version of Hyrule Warriors, or even a new Hyrule Warriors 2 with new characters and enemies from Breath of the Wild. Finally, we turn to Grezzo, who worked on Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, and helped on Triforce Heroes. They recently released Ever Oasis, which didn't do nearly as well as their Zelda remakes. It turns out they are working on at least one unannounced project. With all of this information, and their recent listing wanting to hire someone to work on an Unreal Engine product that was hinted to be a Zelda game, it's likely their new project could be a Zelda game. The listing they used to hire new employees used the words Legend and 2, but has recently changed, probably because their not so subtle hints were being picked up by gaming websites. But here's what it says now. Remember, this was translated from Japanese to English, so there may be some of it that doesn't quite make sense. We are looking for personnel to expand the project. Please visit the page of each job type and apply. Grezzo Company Limited has been engaged in remakes and original game software creation, such as the Legend of Zelda series, Shinkishi Gaiden, and Ever Oasis. From the veteran to the young man, he demonstrates his strength at each position, and he is working together to create works of high quality. Why do not you try making games with us? Now, it's important to note that before they change the bottom line on their listing, would you like to make a Legend Together 2? Not try making games with us. Would you like to make a Legend Together 2, specifically with the number 2, which could also tie in to the Zelda 2 remake Aonuma previously mentioned. It could be another sequel to Majora's Mask, their last Zelda project, making it a third Hero of Time game. Finally, unless the number 2 didn't represent anything, it could mean they were working on 2 games, such as Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, to bring them both to the Nintendo Switch. Yes, I know, a lot of people think Ocarina of Time has already had a lot of ports and an official remake already, so it doesn't deserve it. But it has never had an official HD remake. With the popularity of the fan-based Unreal Engine 4 projects looking amazing, I'm sure Nintendo has taken notice, which is why Grezzo is asking for people with experience in Unreal Engine. Now, put this all together with 2018 being the 20th anniversary for The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which was released in 1998. What would be a better way to celebrate its 20th anniversary than with an official, fully HD remake? Then they could release Majora's Mask HD 2 years later for its official 20th anniversary. Now, these are just my thoughts on all of the news that has come out, but I would like to hear from you. What do you think the future of the Zelda series holds? And what do you personally want to see? What remakes or direct sequels would you like? And where in the Zelda timeline would you like to see Nintendo explore next? The videos on this channel are funded by supporters on Patreon like you. If you're a fan of this channel and would like to join on videos, receive shoutouts, watch videos early, have your questions answered, or have your topic discussed on our podcast, please consider supporting on Patreon for these and many other rewards for just $1. Shoutouts for this video includes Link Use the Triforce, Rusty Caulfield, Lovable Christie, Give Time 15, Shadow to Us, Robbie Morgan, and Lunarium. I want to thank all of you for everything you have done to help support this channel.